And now to the special segment we call The Big Story. So, Jamaica's new cabinet, led by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, will cost taxpayers over 648 million Jamaican dollars annually, with a total cost projected to exceed $3 billion over the 5-year parliamentary term. The cabinet consists of 18 ministers, 13 state ministers, and a parliamentary secretary. Each cabinet minister earns over $22 million per year, while state ministers earn around $18 million annually. The salaries are based on a revised public sector compensation structure, with cabinet ministers earning $53 more than permanent secretaries. The cost of advisors and assistants will add to the overall expense, with each cabinet minister entitled to 2 advisors and state ministers entitled to a special assistant or personal assistant. This morning, we want to dissect this subject and see whether or not this kind of cost is justified. And we're joined by Dr. Karren Dunkley, well-known voice from within the diaspora. She's a public and social commentator. Good morning and welcome once again, Dr. Dunkley. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you so much. And your listeners, Richard.
All right. Thank you, Doc. And we're also joined by a well-known PNP activist. Wherever he is, we track him down. Colin Bell, good morning to you. How are you doing today?
Morning, Colin.
All right. Now, Colin, are you hearing me?
Yes, Richie, I'm hearing you.
Okay, and I'm hearing Doc as well. All right, perfect. Hey, Colin, if I will, let me start with you on this one. $648 million annually. Is this increased cost of the cabinet justified by the potential benefits of having more ministers and advisors?
I don't know, Richie, if you had the Speaker of the House and the Deputy Speaker to that, because that leaves us with a backbench from the government of only 5. What I am looking at, Richie, is the fact that Jamaica is very low on production. We're not producing. Our importation bill way outweighs our export bill, so we're not earning the kind of money to pay these kind of salary. And let me just remind you and your listeners that back in the 90s, I think Professor Rex Netherford had done a report on what a size of cabinet in Jamaica should look like, and he came up with 11 ministries. Now, where we are is almost close to twice that. And with the economy that we have in Jamaica, because we have been given this narrative that the economy is doing well. But for those of us who are tracking the number knows that the economy is in shambles and it's like a pregnancy, it's coming. So, in short order, we will see where the country is having serious problem. I mean, we see it already. The government offered teachers, in fact, civil servant workers, 0% in the first year, which they have refused. They have now offered them another 2%. And with all of that on the table and the size cabinet, I know the reason for it, which I'll tell you later, but let me leave that there for now.
Okay. That was Shaka's first comment, Colin Bell, if you will. Now, Dr. Dunkley, I'd love to get a comment from you as to whether or not this kind of cost is justified and whether or not you believe a cabinet so large will in any way whatsoever impact decision-making and policy implementation in Jamaica. Your thoughts?
My thoughts, Richie, my thoughts are quite simple. 3 points I'd like to make. You use the word justified. I'm going to switch the frame around the context that it would appear. So we know that good governance requires investment. And I think that what we are seeing with the appointment of this cabinet is the mindset that competent leadership will come at some cost. And perhaps what the Prime Minister is trying to imbue is to attract and retain skilled individuals having critical portfolios, such as finance. And so we don't want to undervalue leadership. I think a part of that is the succession planning. Colin said he knows why. I am inferring that a part of the size of the cabinet and the reason why the portfolios are so structured to assumed good intentions is around succession planning, that the Prime Minister is looking at creating this pipeline. I think also there is a national demand, critical outcomes that must be had in this third tenure of the Dr. Andrew Michael Holness-led administration. I think that Jamaica and the world, we're looking at how we're going to handle economic growth, education, climate change, health, another critical industry. And so, again, I'm inferring that this cabinet and the size will allow ministers to have more focused portfolios and ensure that they are not stretched to the point where we cannot count on improved policy delivery and accountability. So against the cost and the size, we must ensure that while the ordinary Jamaican struggles under high inflation, unemployment, and strained public services, that the cabinet delivers on the promise of infrastructure and demonstrable outcomes. And I think that if this is balanced, then the Jamaican people will get value for money, because that is the question I hear you asking, Richie B, is are we getting value for money? Mm-hmm. And I think that this return on investment must be met for the Jamaican people.
Yeah. Okay, Doc. Thank you for that comment. Colin, I know you must be wanting to come in here, but I'm also wanting you to comment on the implications of the cabinet's cost on Jamaica's fiscal sustainability and budget allocations going forward. Go ahead, Colin.
Richie, I don't know if you know what it's called stilt, when they build a house on stilt.
Yes.
Back in the day, we used to use a lot of wood. And if the house is on stilt and the stilts are rot from years of being there, and you put more weight on it, it's going to tumble down. When you look at health, you still have a Christopher Tufton at health, and our health sector is in tatters. Everybody who lives in Jamaica know that. I mean, we see the issue with Cornwall Regional, poor decision, where Cornwall Regional started out at $2 billion and is now projected to end at $23 billion. And we look at the finance, where we are not seeing any good management there. But let me tell you why the cabinet is so big, Richie. When you have a leader who has lost the moral authority to govern and to really rein in and reprimand your charges, then you have to give them what they want to keep them comfortable, to keep them on your side. When you have somebody like a Robert Montague getting back into the cabinet, we have still not received all the used cars that taxpayers' money had been paid for. When you have Andrew Wheatley returning, we still don't get the full explanation for what happened at Petrojam. So that tells you that you have to be comforting all the people around you. I had a manager one time, Richie, who is from Nigeria. And he said to us that, you see, when you're in a business and you deal with corruption or you rob the business, you have to make certain you corrupt everybody. So you have to bring everybody in the robbing circle to ensure that nobody talk on you. So I see it as keeping everybody quiet. And if you look at Warmington, what Warmington did on swearing in, you realize that, so you not deal with me? Me not deal with you neither. Warmington took his oath of office and walked through the door. So you see that there's trouble in the house. So when you look at what it's going to cost us, I don't see the talent that Doc is talking about. If you had that kind of talent that Doc refers to, then yes, you could say, listen, these are people who have performed over the years, or these are people who are coming with new talent and extra vim and vitality to grow the thing. I could understand that, but it's the same old people. When you look at entertainment, sports, and gender affair, it's 81-year-old Babsy Grange who have failed to grow the culture and the creative sector for the last 10 years. She's still at the helm. So I don't see the renewal or the new talent or the new energy that we could say, yes, all right, let's balance it. It can work. I don't
Okay.
see where it can work.
All right. Now,
Richie, may I respond
I want you to come in and respond. Yes. Go ahead, Doc.
Yes, to our esteemed Colin. I hear Colin's point, and I certainly take those points. Colin, when we think about the cabinet, so one of the things in leadership that I have been taught and coached around is not to conflate the system with the people. And I hear the points on that. And Richie, you know that we spoke about the persons in the cabinet.
Yes.
So despite the personalities, we have to think about what is the system that Jamaica needs and needs to build in order to truly become competitive and to deliver on the promise of Jamaica for this generation and the next. And so we need to have what we call an effective governance framework to bring this about. Because, Colin, if we go down that rabbit hole of saying this person and that person, I can't tell you how much and how many conversations, passionate conversations, people have had about the cabinet. So, point taken on that. But what we have to focus on is what is the right system that we need to build so it's not people and personality dependent. It will deliver for us as Jamaicans. The other point, Colin, and I've been hammering this home, is despite the criticisms, notice that we recently had an election, and the electorate have decided to give the Jamaica Labour Party and Dr. Andrew Holness a third term. So coming out of the election for me, and for many of us, that is a public endorsement of leadership. So that is signaling that the Jamaican people are comfortable with the leadership style, the cabinet structure, that they trust the Prime Minister to deliver on stability and results. That is telling me that this third consecutive mandate, that the voters have effectively endorsed the governance approach. So it is now the prerogative how they would like to allocate portfolios and invest in ministerial leadership. The team in place is the one that the Jamaican people have chosen. And therefore, in the full democratic process, I'm going to honor their choice. So they have public confidence in continuity and support for institutional stability, despite the criticisms.
Colin, I can hear you. Your comment seemed to the underbelly of it. It has to do with how the Prime Minister will ensure accountability and transparency. That is what I hear you basically saying. But I know you also want to comment on what Doc just said. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are two things. Doc, it is people who make the system work. You could have the best system in place. If you have bad people operating them, which we have in Jamaica, then we're going to have a problem. Two, yes, the GLP win the third term, but we must also remember, and I like how you framed it, the voters, majority of the voters, because 60% of the people on the voters list did not speak. And that's their fault, and I'm not blaming the win on that. However, when you look at where we are as a country, Doc, I mentioned earlier the health sector, which is up down. I mentioned the culture and the creative industry. And I want to know how agriculture. I don't know if you're aware, Doc, that so far we have imported about $1.8 billion of food in Jamaica. And we have export only about 800 million. The other thing I want to say to you, the majority is not always right. And I'm not comparing anybody to Jesus in Jamaica, but I just want to use this analogy. When Jesus was on the cross and Pilate Pontius said to the people, who should we free as the norm? We always free somebody. They said, free Barabbas. I'm not saying that anybody in Jamaica is lying to Jesus, but I'm just showing you that to say to you that the majority is not always right. And a friend of mine said to me the other day, the government voted back themselves in power. And I don't know if I would have the time to explain to you how that works. But I will agree with you, the GLP win the government. But what we are seeing, this overweighted cabinet, will not be able to pay for itself. And as I said earlier, it's a pregnancy. It's coming, and we will see.
Dr. Dunkley, let's focus a little bit more then on the whole matter of accountability and transparency in the use of public funds by ministers and advisors. How will the Prime Minister ensure that that is met, accountability and transparency?
Absolutely. Great, excellent question. And so I hear Colin, and I absolutely take that point that it takes people to make the system work. In this particular case around accountability and transparency, we must strengthen the system. So, for example, the Integrity Commission, the Auditor General, and the Contractor General need full independence and resources from any government entity. You cannot police yourself. So every system that I've been involved with, you would recognize that I've worked extremely closely with the Department of Justice. And one thing I have learned coming out as a consultant is that a body cannot police. It cannot grant oversight to itself. So these agencies must have full autonomy and independence from any interference or any engagement, whether or not it's interference. So that's number one. Strengthen the oversight institutions. Transparent procurement and reporting. So we need to publish all major contracts, tenders, and cabinet portfolio budgets online. The annual ministerial performance reports, which again ties back to the Jamaican people, will need to see that they're getting value for money. And I think that will produce a positive outcome. It should be tabled in Parliament and accessible to the public. So we should have a performance report. And then we need clear cabinet performance measurable targets around crime reduction, education outcomes, and investment figures. Remember, right, that in sports, my husband always tells me this, when a sports team does not perform, you see how quickly, especially in American football, they fire that coach. So we need, if we don't get the outcomes, to ensure, again, to call into your point, having the right people in the bus. And then zero tolerance, right? So we have seen that ministers have been implicated, and quite frankly, quite a number of persons in credible corruption allegations. And we should have a system. So the system that I know, when you're under investigation, innocent or not, you step aside and you allow the investigation, and you are held in a holding pattern,
Doc?
And then based on the outcome of the investigation, you proceed.
Doc, you said that?
What? What? I'm talking, because I'm talking about the system. Yes, because we're talking. Yes, I'm answering. Richie B has asked, how do we ensure accountability and transparency? That's it. We have to build a system around it. And then I think, Richie B, we're here. So the citizen and the media engagement. I think the regular press briefings, I think that those play a critical role. I think expanding the access to government, the data portal, so citizens and journalists can scrutinize information in real time is also critical. But I think that those have to be the guardrails that we put in place to ensure that the system is transparent and accountable and not open to any influence or interference.
I'm going to allow you, Colin, to respond to what surprised you most about what Doc just said. But we note that the opposition is a much stronger opposition. Your numbers have pretty much doubled. And I also want you to tie into your answer how the opposition will hold the government accountable for its spending and for its policies. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, well, Richie, you heard Doc said that when somebody's accused of corruption or stuff like that, they should step aside. You look straight in the face of the Prime Minister when you say that, because the Prime Minister was under investigation for illicit enrichment by the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission had kicked that up the value chain by pushing it to the FID and the TOJ for further investigation. But the Prime Minister ran in the election and won. The other thing, Richie, is that Doc spoke about the independence of institutions like the Integrity Commission, the Auditor General. Bobby Montague was one of the men who was tearing the Integrity Commission apart. He's now a cabinet minister. So that doesn't spell any confidence of what is going to happen going forward. I want to ask Doc a question, though. Do you think a sitting prime minister should be hustling and juggling, doing personal business, buying stocks and bonds while sitting in the office as prime minister? His wife, and let me not say his wife, let me say MP Juliet Holness, who is also Speaker of the House, and yes, the wife of the Prime Minister. Do you think that spells well for good governance, for transparency? And Juliet, Mrs. Holness, MP Holness, is also a real estate developer actively in the market right now while being the Speaker of the House, with a lot of those agencies coming under her husband's portfolio. No transparency, no accountability can operate under this kind of environment. The opposition, Richie, is, yes, stronger, but I am a member of the People's National Party and a paid-up member of the People's National Party. In fact, I'm the vice chairman of Region 2, which covers St. Mary, Portland, and St. Thomas. Mm-hmm. And I will say this publicly. I think the opposition needs to drop a little of this being decent in the House of Parliament. The
Colin
opposition made it clear. Let me just finish it up. The opposition made it clear that they will not support Juliet Holness or Marissa Dalrymple Filbert to become Speaker of the House. Yet when they swore in, they go up and they shake Mrs. Holness. And Warmington walk out, never even shook the Prime Minister's hand. Now, if I am saying I am not supporting you for Speaker, I'm going to swear in and turn around and go shake the Prime Minister and shake Floyd Green and them. And I'm not going to shake the Speaker of the House, and I don't endorse you. I told you I wouldn't endorse you. And on the very same day, I must come back and shake your hand. The opposition needs to be more forthright, needs to be more firm, and insist that some of the things that is happening in this House of Parliament stop. And I am begging them to bring to the Parliament that no sitting Prime Minister should be doing personal business while being a Prime Minister of Jamaica.
Right.
It does not spell well. It shows conflict of interest, and people lose confidence why the Prime Minister should be competing with me, Richie, a simple man, an average man. And like I always tell people, all men are not equal. The Prime Minister going to get preferential treatment every day. Any bank him walk in, him going to get preferential treatment.
I only have I only have a minute left, and I wanted to just allow
that to answer the question if Prime Minister should be hustling and juggling while in office. Doc,
if you care to, you can give a comment.
Colin has said a lot, Richie. 1 minute.
Hold on, Doc. Hold on. Let me just.
That world leaders, global president, that leaders in other democracies, they do retain their business holdings. They do continue to do business. I live in the United States, and our president does a tremendous amount of business, and presidents historically here have done. They continue to retain their business holdings. So, Colin, this is what I'm saying. If this is an issue, then we need to change the system. If the majority of Jamaicans, but in terms of global precedent, we're not outside of global precedent. But I want to speak a little bit about Mrs. Holness, because I have to say this. And I'm not responding, Colin, to anything you have said, but just based on merit and competence, we would agree that Juliet Holness, if any person was deserving of a ministry, Colin, it would be her. If you look at her track record, her professional background, and the way in which she has performed in her constituency, for me, that was a glaring omission from this cabinet. And I think a cabinet position in terms of a ministerial portfolio would have been more effective for Mrs. Holness.
All right. I heard you, Doc, and I heard you, Colin. I wish I could continue, because I'm sure that Colin would love to come in on that, but we're out of time. It's now 7:30, and I'll maybe have to have a part 2 on this. But thank you both for your thoughts and your time this morning.
Definitely.
Thank you. Good to see you, Colin.
With you, but it was a pleasure. Blessings.
Yes, you too.
And to both of you as well. Thank you both so very much. That was the big story right here on the Richie B. Morning.